Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Breaking Even with Al Paton on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. I'm Al Paton, joined today for a huge episode heading into round 4 by Patch. Welcome again.
Hello Al, delighted to be here. Thank you for having me on once again.
And the DPP king himself, I'm sure that will come up plenty of times during the podcast. Tim Mitchell, great to have you on.
Hey Al, yeah, it's all hotting up, isn't it? Only a couple of weeks away from those first DPP editions, so looking forward to getting stuck in. Who knows, maybe your boy Christian Petrarca might get there.
Yeah, that has impacted some of my trade thoughts this week, but yes, we'll get into all that stuff. Reminder, of course, like, subscribe on wherever you're listening or watching, of course, on the Code Sports YouTube channel. And a reminder again that the SuperCoach Plus free trial has expired. So, rather than getting blocked by when you try and see all your break-evens and all the stats that we love in SuperCoach, $30 roughly, or just under that, for a 12-month subscription is definitely money well spent. That'll also cover you when SuperCoach BBL comes around later in the year because it lasts for a full 12 months. So get on to that, but we'll get into your questions very shortly. But first, of course, we have to do the HBF injury report. Every Supercoach knows that managing injuries is a key to success. This is the injury report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Some very interesting names on the injury list this week. We'll start off with Xavier Lindsay, who, as we speak, is the most traded out player in Supercoach. Of course, I think about 50,000 of us brought him in last week when he was on the bubble. Looked fantastic as a rookie and looked really good early in that game. I think he had 2 kicks in the first 2 minutes, then went down with a knee injury. Shocking news for first-year player. We thought he might be gone for the year, but Melbourne now saying it's a 1 to 2 week injury. So we'll probably get into that. What do we do with him? But certainly much more positive on the injury front there. And Melbourne probably will see some changes this week. Obviously, Lindsay will be out, but Cozzy Pickett is available after serving his suspension, and there's a few other players who are down for fitness tests, like a Caleb Windsor, Jake Lever. So, we might see some changes at the Ds this week. Another big injury, Jeremy McGovern, we know can be injury prone, and he's out for 2 to 4 weeks with an adductor injury. So that might be very interesting for another one of our top targets this week over at the Eagles. And at Brisbane, Kai Lohmann is out for another week, missing another week with his ankle. So that might help Levi Ashcroft potentially. And I did see on their injury list too that Kitty Coleman's still down as 4 to 6 weeks away.
That's very annoying for someone who didn't start Dane Sorko because of the impeding return of Kitty Coleman. But anyway.
Who have you got for us, Patch? I have some very sad and devastating news out of Essendon, which thank you for giving me on the run sheet. Tom Edwards has done his ACL. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but it's all but confirmed from training, and he will miss the rest of the season. Jack Caldwell has also done a hamstring, which they haven't given a timeline at time of recording, but it's probably not good for him. Maybe it's good for Elijah Sardis, who knows one to watch there. Tristan Cherry scared a lot of people with a hamstring issue during the week. Maybe? Awareness? Yeah, I'm not sure. Early in the game?
Not entirely sure what it was, but scanner's clear, so he's good to go.
Yes.
And Tom Stewart is a test.
What's Dylan going to do? Tell us.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well, the interesting one up in Sydney, Al's Callum Mills. Sounds like he's at least another month away from returning. I know a lot of super coaches had him in their plans. Obviously, a heavily discounted defensive option for us this year, but sounds like he's still, potentially 3, 4, if not longer away. So we're going to have to sort of put those plans on the back burner and potentially look at some other options thankfully, the defensive rookies are cooking now, so might be able to just hold on to them a bit longer and wait for Callum Mills. But, we've got to put him. Unfortunately, we won't have him for another month or so. The other big injury news to come out of the last few days is that Zach Butters' test probably sounds, at the time of recording, more likely than unlikely that he's going to play. So whether that has any impact on Christian Moraes, who's a really popular rookie, who I'm sure we're going to talk about today.
Jason Horne-Francis.
and Jason Horne-Francis as well. God, he's going well, isn't he? And if we head over to the West, Sean Darcy and Haydn Young both due to play Waffle this week too. So as good as Luke Darcy was for Dossie on the left, Luke Jackson, was on Sean Darcy, his pending returns sure to have some impact there.
Yep, absolutely. That's a wrap on this week's injury report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. So a couple of quick segments before we get into the questions. One is Fallen Premo Watch. I've just put a couple of guys on here that we can be keeping an eye on their price coming down. Kieran Briggs is an interesting one, obviously coming back from that really horrible concussion where he only scored, I think, 5 points. He's already lost a bunch of money, and he's got a break even of 202 this week, so projected to lose another 50K. So if you need a cheap ruckman, and I know there's some Matt Flynn owners still out there, perhaps the wise move there is to hold off a week, and you can maybe get Briggsy next week at a discounted price. And he scored okay, so hopefully he'll at least get you through to maybe the mid-year buys, and then you can figure out what you do with your rucks then. LDU's had a really underwhelming start to the year. Luke Davies-Uniacke, he's got a break-even of 154. He already lost 40K, and he's going to lose some more money. So he's down to 548 and probably might be able to get him around the 500K mark. And then I think we'd be very interested. I got him mid-year last year at a discount. It was about 570, I think, at that stage, and he was fantastic on the run home. So we know what he can do, but he hasn't done it yet, but that could be good for us in terms of looking for a cheap primo. Where do we stand on Nick Dacos? He didn't play last week, obviously, so he's still got that, as we noted last week, 1,115 break even, it says here, but 115. So probably not going to get much cheaper than his current 602K.
Not the way he plays against Carlton. Thursday night could be an ugly watch if you don't have Nick Dacos in your team. So I've got this hope as a Blues fan that Carlton's going to find some way to tag him, send George Hewitt to him or something and try and limit his influence. But yeah, there's a fair chance Nick Dacos gets that this week. I don't see him getting a lot cheaper. I've got Kieran Briggs on the radar though because, and speaking of Carlton, like Mark Pitney is only a week away. And I think that there's going to have to be some possibility that as good as Tom DeConning's been for us, we might need to be looking for an exit plan in the next couple of weeks. And I think Kieran Briggs for 150K profit might be a pretty good option when he bottoms out.
Yeah, and the other one I know you were just keeping a sneaky eye on was Sid Draper, obviously rookie priced, high rookie price to start the year, and he actually started losing a bit of money because he kept being the sub. But there was you sort of thought, well, maybe in a few weeks we could get him for 140K or something, but that looks like it probably won't happen now.
He just got on too early on the weekend. I think he was on in the first quarter or played about 3 quarters anyway, so that meant he actually scored okay. So his break-even's 39, but you wouldn't imagine he's going to lose a lot from sort of 182K, which he is now, having lost about 8 or 9K on the weekend. So still like him though. I think when he gets into that Adelaide midfield, he's going to be a really good scorer for us and one that we might want to consider at that elevated rookie price, especially if he gets DPP in a few weeks, which is looking like a real possibility.
Yeah, and the other one we didn't mention in the injury report was Josh Rochelle out for 4 to 6 weeks. Yep. So that's what allowed him to get on, obviously, last week when he was subbed off. So maybe he comes into the 22.
Ranking forward.
Yeah,
maybe.
Please no.
Hope not. I also hope not, but yeah, that's got to be a possibility, doesn't it? Ranking forward, Draper a bit more midfield time.
And we'll have a quick round of rookie roulette, which, as we saw last week, can really catch you out, even or maybe especially in a best 18 round. So, start with you, Patch. Would you field Zach Reid or Luke Traynor this week?
Well, Zach Reid's on the bye this week.
Well, so probably not.
Probably not Zach Reid.
Good call. Good call. Thank you, Patch. Help me out there. We'll try another one. Levi Ashcroft, Tim, or Mitch Nevitt?
Well, so much depends on whether Nevitt's sub again, doesn't it? And I haven't had a close look at the fixtures just yet just to see whether that pans out. Levi Ashcroft was pretty underwhelming against the Cats, but I think with difficult opposition plus those really tough conditions that we saw up in Queensland, I think we can forgive him for that one. So probably go Levi just.
And he does play the Tigers this week. Might be a little bit
I could
easy.
score against the Tigers.
And Nevitt, the Cats play Friday night, so we should know at least early in the round what's happening now. I'll try another one, Patch, if you had to choose between Riley Bice or Connor O'Sullivan in your defence.
Riley Bice.
We like him. Christian Moraes, I forgot to leave Ashcroft twice. We'll ignore that one. This segment's going really well. We'll try just skip straight to the last one, and this especially for our friend Dossie. Would you field Sam Davidson or Elijah Hewitt in your forward line tip?
Is that really a question?
Well,
Sam Davidson.
Not everyone got it right last week.
Yeah, we picked Jason Horne-Francis as F1, and we picked Sam Davidson as F6, F7, and one is outscoring the other for about 400K less. So definitely Davidson.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be leaving our fields anytime soon. All right, we'll get into the guts of the show, which is, of course, your questions. Keep an eye out for that tweet every week on the Tuesday, Wednesday morning, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So, I've just found this week there's 4 or 5 players I really want to trade in. Obviously, we only have a maximum of 3 trades. Probably, ideally, wouldn't use a boost if I didn't have to, but it's probably going to be hard to avoid. But we'll see what people want to know. So, Humphreys or Maric is, I think a few people really...
This is the big one.
Yeah, because they're both, sort of 260, 270K, only about 5K difference.
Yeah.
And
Ryan Maric at the Eagles has been fantastic. Well, fantastic on the weekend. He scored 71 in round 2 after being the sub round 1, 123 on the weekend after taking kick-outs and being the distributor off half-back. And Bailey Humphrey has been playing as the 3rd or 4th midfielder at the Suns and just looks like, dare I say it, shades of Dustin Martin. So both are pretty much the exact same price. Both, Humphrey will get mid status. He's just a forward at the moment. Maric is mid forward. There's not a lot splitting them, and so many questions this week were all about.
Yeah, because I think there's, which I'm sure we'll touch on, there's 2 or 3 really good rookies as well. So by the time you get 1 or 2 of those, you probably can only get 1 of these guys.
Yep.
So putting you on the spot, who do you like?
I still don't know. I was hoping I'd have an answer by this stage of the week. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Maric. That early DPP is a bit friendlier for my team, and I just feel like I'd rather someone playing off halfback than someone playing kind of a mid-forward role. And Humphrey has scored 2 tons, looked really good, passed the eye test, but he has played Essendon and Melbourne, who are not good this year. And I don't doubt he'll continue to have the role. And
Was that a win, Patch?
Well, they didn't deserve it. Yeah, there's no doubt that Humphrey has passed the eye test, but I'm just not convinced he'll stay at 100. He might drop to 85 or 90. Still good, still valid to trade into. Maric might only average the same. I don't think there's a wrong answer at this stage. Humphrey feels like the higher risk, higher reward guy where he could be your F6. There's the chance that he's your F6 if he keeps the role and keeps scoring and keeps playing really well and developing. Maric probably less so, but I feel like I'm more confident in Maric over the next 4 weeks making cash than the smaller sample size I've seen from Humphrey.
Most likely both of these guys are probably a 4 to 6 week kind of play, aren't they? Make a bunch of cash and then you trade them in, when upgrade season comes around 8, 9, that kind of time. But yeah, there's a possibility one or both could hang on at least, through to the mid-season buys. And for me, I think Maric is probably a little bit safer. But yeah, very hard to pick. What do you think, Tim? You mentioned the Gold Coast draw, but it doesn't get hard for a while, does it?
Well, they got Adelaide this week, which I think is going to be a pretty good litmus test of Bailey Humphrey and his development into this midfield role. Like he's coming up against one of the sort of better performed midfields in the first few rounds of the season in Adelaide. So I don't know, I'm in this tricky position where I didn't start Bailey Smith because I'm an idiot. So I've got to try and fit Bailey Smith in this week into my trades, which makes it even more difficult. But I think people who have grabbed one of Riley Bice and Christian Moraes already, who are the 2 popular rookies this week, are in a really good spot now because, presumably you've only used 1, maybe 2 boosts, but this looks like a perfect week for me to use a boost. And if you've already got one of those rookies, you can then get on both Humphrey and Maric, and you can enjoy 150k cash generation and an average of probably around 90 from both of them for the next 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to best 22 as well next week, which I think you'd be more comfortable fielding those guys over some of the other rookies, especially in midfield, which is probably what nudges Maric ahead. Like Bailey Humphrey might get mid status. He's sort of around the threshold for the amount of time that he's spent in midfield so far, but Maric is already a forward mid, so you can get one of those rookie midfielders off potentially like a Finn O'Sullivan. Yeah. So the other thing to consider too, West Coast has conceded 91 scoring shots in 3 rounds, and I think
sounds like a lot.
42 behinds in that time. So he's going to get an absolute gluttony of kick-outs, and that's probably going to give him you'd think, a floor of 80 minimum, even if he doesn't get that much ball.
And we know McGovern as well.
Well, the concern people have is that McGovern goes out, so he has to be a little bit more accountable. But Ryan Maric isn't playing in defence to be accountable. He's there for his foot skills, and he's there to get the ball going for the Eagles. So I think he's going to be a really good pick for a few weeks. And if you had to pick one and hold off on the other, I'd probably take another look at Humphrey against Adelaide and see how he goes against a proper midfield as opposed to the 2 teams that they've faced so far, Gold Coast.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I suppose one thing that I've heard people float the idea of is because, I think it's probably easier to get Maric into my midfield rather than find a spot in the forward line. But you could move a Bailey Smith or a Caleb Daniel into the mids for a few weeks, create an opening, do it that way, and then just you sort of, shuffling deck chairs a bit and make sure that, in a few weeks' time you get everyone back where you want them. But there is a way you could potentially do it. Humphrey,
how do you get them in? And that's the next question from Luppy, which is it
that's a harder one.
Is it worth trading Jason Horne-Francis if it means you can get both of them or one of them even? Some people might not have the 120k required to get from a rookie up, or even from a Xavier Lindsay up. That's 80k. That's still a decent jump. Al, could we trade Jason Horne-Francis out?
I sort of think these are separate questions in a way. I think the answer to the first one is yes. Obviously, it's been a bit of an ongoing saga that I didn't have Horne-Francis in my team for most of the preseason. Caved
How
just
much
before round 1.
Schadenfreude did you get when I asked you that question?
Now, obviously wish I'd stuck to my guns because he's been very average to start the season so far. I think I put in the trade guide this week someone like Seth Campbell or Ben Long or Caminiti are scoring better than him so far to start the season. I'm sure he will come good. He's not going to be like this all year, but I don't think he's going to all of a sudden average 120. Like someone like a Bailey Smith, I can understand why you just think, I just have to get this guy because if I don't have him, he could just absolutely kill me. But I don't think Horne-Francis is going to do that. Like, if you look at his scoring for all of last year, he averaged basically 100, and most of his scores were 80s and 90s, and he had half a dozen like 140s, and that's what sort of pushed his average up. So, one of those might come this week, and that'll hurt if you trade him out. But I think if you think overall you're going to improve your team and maybe get all this cash coming in, I think there's a path that actually makes sense. Would I go all the way down to a Maric or a Humphrey though? That's a big drop.
There's a world where you do that trade, like you do Horne-Francis to Maric this week, and then in 4, 5, 6 weeks' time, you revert back.
Yeah.
And yes, you're burning 2 trades, but you've made $200K, you've improved your team this week, and really the only cost you is going to be that extra trade to then get Jason Horne-Francis back. But there's a chance that, in 5 or 6 weeks' time, their prices actually meet. Yeah. And you can do that trade as a straight swap, which I think is worth entertaining if you haven't burned a bunch of trades on doing silly things like me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've got someone like Sam de Koning, who we think sort of has to
Stinky.
go, if you can do some DPP and swap him to a Maric or something, I'd rather do it that way, or obviously if you can get up from a rookie. But,
See, this is my issue, sorry, Patch. Like, I've got Sam de Koning, who I think is expendable and I'm willing to write off as a flop. I traded him in, I didn't start him, and unfortunately it just hasn't worked out. I've still got Jaden Short sitting there in my defence as well, who I'd like to trade out, but the only DPP I've got to swing back to my defence is your brother, Ben Paton. So I can trade one of them and swing Paton back, but I then have to trade in a defender if I want to trade a second one, which means I can't get one of Maric, Moraes and Humphrey this week. So I'm going to have to sacrifice and get a defender. So I hope people aren't in that same situation as me where, your 2 most expendable players are both def only. Because, I'm a bit snookered this week as to which way I'm going to go to try and make it all happen.
Yeah, there's a question here from Belinda. Is it time to trade SDK? I mean, Patch, are we just universally saying?
Yep.
I think Reece Stanley will play this week. They've got Gawn. Reece Stanley kicked a couple of goals and was apparently very good in the VFL. So I think we're about to see the end of that SDK ruck experiment for now, and he'll probably play on Jacob Van Rooyen maybe this week.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great. And I think his break-even's getting up to around 100, so he could actually lose money.
It's low 90. He'll probably lose 10K at least this week.
Yeah, for a mid-pricer, that's not exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
No.
Question from Scott, is there a world which you could justify fading Bailey Smith? So this is, kind of getting to what you're saying, that you've kind of committed to having one trade used on him, means you can't get Maric and Humphrey, or potentially, either of them in this case. Would you potentially leave Bailey Smith and grab the 2 or 1 or 2 of those?
I think Bailey Smith is the higher priority because all signs at this stage are pointing to him being a top 8 forward. I'm in the same boat as Tim. I don't have him. I'm bringing him in this week. That might cost me the chance to bring in Maric or Humphrey, but I think at this stage the priority is cash flow, and it is to make sure you're not missing the guys that are going, like a Bailey Smith, I think is the one guy in this category that looks like he's going to be in the very top part of his position, and he's super cheap and you need to jump on. And that's where I'm landing at the moment, and I don't know, maybe in 24 hours I've changed my mind, but that I think at this stage you need, Maric and Humphrey should be a lower priority than these rookies and, Bailey Smith.
I mean, the way we play the game, we want to make cash so we can trade up to get keepers. And if you can just get Smith now, who is a keeper, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what
he still can't kick, but he was still scoring a hell of a lot of points. Like, if it hadn't been for, I think, 2 late free kicks against and a drop mark in the centre when that game was really close against Brisbane, which cost him about 10 or 15 points, he probably would have tonned again on the weekend, which I think he went at about 10% by foot. Like which that game probably suited him in a way, because unless you were Dane Zorko, just about everyone went at about 10% by foot, which meant that his scoring maybe levelled out. But it just looks like he's going to be a must-have, and it's been a really painful watch the first couple of weeks not having him, especially after I took him out about 20 minutes before his 148 in round 1. So definitely got to remedy that this week.
Question, you touched on this, Tim, and it's certainly something I'm weighing up this week too. This is from Jimmy, wondering if Moraes is a consistent, viable option. Trying to get another mid-rookie lock so my trades aren't all spent on rookies. So I'm sort of tossing up if I want Maric, I want Humphrey potentially. What am I doing with Jason Horne-Francis? If I had to pick, probably need to get both of Moraes and Bice, or could you get one and let the other one go?
No, you need both.
Oh, damn it. I want someone to tell me it's okay to leave one out.
But I think you need both. Unless Moraes drops back to the sub, which I don't see happening.
Butters in, Moraes out.
He was so good against Essendon.
He was about their only good player. I was sitting there going, who is that? I don't recognise who that is. Oh, it's that second gamer that's cutting us up. That checks out. I mean, he won't play Essendon every week. Part of me is trying to justify that you can pass him because that makes me feel better about my trade plans. But I think he's going to be one of the better rookies we get at that bargain basement price. As Tim said, you kind of have to have him. You have to have Bice.
Is there a world you could not get Bice if you've got, like, I've only got 3 rookies in defence anyway, and now suddenly Trainer and Reader, primos.
I did that and then remembered that the flex exists. And I'm like, well, I can sit one of them there, can't I?
Damn it. Yep. You're right.
Sorry, Al. Sorry, Al. That's not the answer you want.
If I was only getting one, I'd get Bice of the two.
Yeah.
I'd be more prepared to fade Moraes.
I mean, Swans have a few players coming back, but we did note earlier that Mills is now a fair way off. So,
yeah.
And I mean, he was a sub only 2 weeks ago. So you think, is he guaranteed, best 22? But he's been pretty good in his 2 games.
I think he had 1.3 points per minute as sub, and then he won them the game against Fremantle. So I'd say his job security is reasonably safe.
Yeah.
You go through the Port team though. Like I don't think it'll be Moraes this week, but in a couple of weeks' time, he could easily be sub again too. Butters is going to come back in, so someone's got to drop out. Maybe it's Berry that goes to sub this week, and Cochrane drops out of the team. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a possibility in a few weeks' time if Moraes has one quiet game that he goes back to sub or he goes back to the Sandful. Hopefully, he's made a bit of cash by then though.
Yeah. I do agree with that, and I think if you have to pass on one, it is like Bryce is the one you need, and Moraes is the one you would pass on.
Supercoach a game for playing behind the ball now, and that's where Bice plays. Yeah. So
a mature ager.
I don't.
Werribee Footy Factory.
I should say Moraes though, like I don't buy into the talk that him and Butters Butters is going to eat into his scoring too much. Yeah, Butters is going to score well, but Moraes didn't have a centre bounce against Essendon.
Yeah,
so he's not going to get his role's not going to change significantly because Zach Butters is back. So if you're worried, if you're trying to use Butters as your justification for not picking him, I don't think that's the right reason to leave him out.
Yeah, I think they played Moraes wing and pushed Jace Burgon into the backline, which was great for him.
See, Jace Bergen's DPP went up by about 50% for Def because he played solely as a defender against Essendon and played very well.
All right, we better get into some other questions. Mick's asking about Humphrey as well. He's asking, is Horne-Francis top 6 forward? Yeah, I don't know. That's borderline. I mean, he's around the mark.
The other day.
But there's a few other forwards that we think are pretty good. So,
well, this leads into the DPP discussion. So Christian Petrarca is sitting at about 36.5% at the moment. So if Christian Petrarca was to get forward status, it becomes a must-have instantly. Sydney had the bye in the weekend, so Chad Warner's still above 35% as well. We'll watch with interest where he plays against North Melbourne this week. But if those two become forwards, and then we're thinking Bailey Smith's going to be around that mark, and then
Nick Martin might
Nick
get
Martin's
DPP.
Potentially in that mix too. Although we had to check because I've never seen this before, but he's a defender that's played more than 35% in the forward line and the midfield so far this year. So
TPP,
he could be a unicorn. he could be our first triple position player, but that's not going to happen. You can only have 2 positions, so. I think he gets whichever one is higher of the 2 out of forward and midfield if that still ends up being the case. But there's going to be some really good plays in the forward line. Like I've gone from thinking Horne-Francis is a lock to be top 3 to maybe top 8, top 10.
Because I mean, Rankin, you think lock that away,
Rankin's going to
throw away the key. I mean, McRae, he's averaging 120. Caleb Daniel just. We're sort of not really paying much attention to him because everyone's got him, but he just rolls out every week and scores 110.
Yeah.
So there's 3 spots taken.
Well, they said that I was watching that North Melbourne game on the weekend against Adelaide on Sunday, and I think the Fox commentator said, I was listening on radio, and the radio commentator said Caleb Daniels had the worst kicking day of his life.
Yeah, I saw that on.
And then I checked, I checked the scores, and he was on about 110. So, he's just a walk up triple figure just about most weeks, isn't he? So it's going to be really competitive. And Horne-Francis has gone from, like I said, top 2, top 3 guaranteed to question mark if he's in sort of the top 8 after the first few weeks. He's going to bounce back. It's just a matter of when. And then hopefully it's soon.
By that time, he's averaging, he's like 45th or something now, so he has to get past a lot of guys. So I think there's a difference between him and someone like Harry Sheasel, who I think we're confident that he will end up in that top 6. Maybe not a clear number 1 like we thought at the start of the year, but I'd be very reluctant to trade him. Whereas Horne-Francis, maybe. I mean, I don't think keeping him is a terrible idea, but I think you could maybe do something with that trade and end up ahead. Mick also asked a question about how do we get Rowell into our teams. Must-have player. Not sure if he's quite must-have, but I'm very tempted after last year, blew my team up completely.
Why would you do it to yourself again?
But geez, he's looked good so far. He's at number 1 averaging mid so far, and the mid primos are not doing much. So, I like Gold Coast draw the next few weeks. You mentioned Adelaide this week's not great, but then they have Richmond, I think, and North in the next few as well. Maybe Port. So...
Doesn't he do this every year? Even in his rookie year, he came out and scored 4 tons in a row.
Yeah,
and then I think he got injured when he was flying. Last year, after 8 rounds, he was the number 1, 8 or 9 rounds, he was the number 1 player in SuperCoach. And I think logically, you made the right call. They're playing 2 games in Darwin. He already has about 12 tackles a game. He's going to have so much contested ball up there. And then his season just fell apart from that point. So I don't know whether the only thing I can possibly think is that because he plays such a physical game that he gets to a certain point of the season where he has to regress a bit. But he looks like a different player this year, and I think he looks to the eye a little bit leaner than he's been in previous seasons as well, and that has enabled him to play slightly more outside, as well as still being a beast on the inside too. So
which he's never really.
I can see why people are keen, but I'd be wary based on the history as well.
Yeah, I think he's a good trade in, but I think you don't blow your team up to get him in.
Yeah.
I think if you're starting to pull stuff apart and you're trading out Sheasel, or I don't think you should be blowing it all up to get him in.
No.
He'll be good. I really like him. 550k is the cheapest he'll be for a long time. You don't desperately need him. There will be other cheaper.
There's good midfield bargains coming.
Yeah.
In upgrade season. So I don't think you desperately need to make that move.
Yeah, we've got 3 people questioned about LDU, and we spoke before that LDU's on the watch list as someone who might drop off in price. People are asking if they should trade him. No, absolutely not. You're going LDU to Rowell is a waste of a trade when people will be looking to trade LDU in a couple of weeks.
I hate that. And then when the inevitable bounce back happens, it only hurts more.
Yeah.
Knowing that you had him in your team 4 weeks before he posts 150, which you know is going to happen at some stage.
And you might have to burn another trade to get him back.
Yes. And pay more than you traded him out for.
Yeah. We saw him last year. He had a slump. He bounced back and was fantastic on that run home. Bide your time. It'll hurt. It sucks, but...
Yeah. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but he'll start averaging 110 at some stage.
Yeah.
Benny asking, Petrarca, should I trade to a Rowell or a Sinclair? Should I hold? Will he get forward DPP? Will Simon Goodwin play track as a midfielder? He's getting very frustrated, which I am too. I'm a Petrarca owner. He's averaged, I think he's about 90, but he got 98 round 1, then a couple of sort of 80s. Very high forward time last week. I'm not sure Simon Goodwin does know really what the answer is there for Melbourne at the moment in the midfield or the forward line, so very hard to predict. But the prospect of him getting forward status, I don't think we can trade him, can we, Tim?
I think you've got to hold now until at least, it's pre-round 6 they kick in. So you've only got to look at gather round, round 5, and have a look until then, weigh up if he gets DPP, and then you can make a call either way. But I know you asked me earlier in the week whether I thought you should trade Horne-Francis or Petrarca, and at that stage my answer was Petrarca, because I thought who's out of those two, who's going to be top 6, top 8 in their position, and I didn't think Petrarca was going to get close in the midfield. But a whole different story now. We know he's above 35% threshold for forward status. So, definitely be holding on to Petrarca and reassessing in a few weeks' time.
And I think the D's draw actually in round 7 or 8 or something. They have West Coast and Richmond back to back. If we hold on till then, we should get some reward. And it's similar for Max Gawn. Anthony, how's this for a question? Should you trade out both Gawn and Cherry? Anthony asking.
No.
Why?
You have a lot of money.
You would. You'd then set and forget. Say it with me. Stop trading in the rucks.
Who would you even trade them to?
I don't know.
Unless one was flex.
Archer Reed. Make some money.
Unless one was flex, and then you could go to
you'd have to
anybody.
have 3, surely.
You could go to Essendon's got the bye this week. I was going to say to Zach Merritt off the bye, but you could go to one of the Sydney guys, couldn't you, coming off their bye, or Nick Dacos potentially this week coming off his bye.
Yeah, no, you just.
I still hate it though.
No, you just got to cop it. Especially Gawn. There's been a bit of talk about it, but they've got Geelong this week. They've got Essendon the week after, who are tougher to play against for rucks. Freo, who aren't as super easy if Darcy's back, but then it opens up with Richmond, West Coast, Hawthorn, Brisbane, Sydney. It opens right up.
I flagged trading Gawn a few weeks ago, and I think it had to be after round 1. So a lot of us got him purely for the free hit that he had against Lockie Keefe.
Yep.
And then Lockie Keefe won GWS the game, and Gawn went from about 140 to 129 really late in the game. Only just got that borderline captaincy score, which was disappointing. I think if you were going to split his value, it had to be then.
Yep.
Now he's lost about 50K.
Yep.
You're already cashing him in at a loss, and he's got Sam DeConning or Reece Stanley or Mark Blitzarves this week. So you've just got to hope this is the week it bounces back and Melbourne starts playing decent footy. But, yeah, their midfield's been all at sea the first few weeks. So I think Max Gawn's too good a player to continue to put out 85 to 100 scores every week. But, yeah, it's going to be a frustrating ride. And people like me that pulled their team apart to get him in for round one are sort of really suffering now. It's showing through in my rank because, I committed to him and Sheasel and Lockie Neal thinking especially that you needed Gawn and Lockie Neal for the early runs. And, it's been very painful first few weeks.
Well, I said to Al earlier this week, the biggest problems in my team this year are D1 Harry Sheasel, M1 Lockie Neal, and F1 Jason Horne-Francis.
Yes,
they're the
crazy,
ones that
isn't
have caused me the most grief. And very frustrating.
I don't know why you trade Cherry either. Like Jack Darling did a fair bit of ruck work, but that was only because Cherry was a bit banged up on the weekend. They weren't sure how bad his injury was. And you already said, Patch, he's fine. He'll play this week.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Mick Randall also asking about Shees and Callaghan. We've covered Shees or Callaghan.
No, Callaghan's got West Coast this week.
Yeah.
No way
Do
you
not.
trade him this week.
No,
he could come out and put 150 on West Coast.
I reckon with Callaghan, you're there until the bye. Now
Yeah.
you're invested, you're involved.
He's not, unless he gets that spike score again, like he's probably not going to make as much of a profit as people had hoped because Connor Nash went to him on the weekend, and there's the possibility that he also cops Marcus Windhagen next week, but I wouldn't want to trade him out this week because he could go absolutely astronomical.
Yeah, if you bought him in, it shouldn't have been for that cash spike. It should have been for points throughout the first half of the season, or some people think he'd be a keeper. But
I think there's a chance that he ends up as your M8 or M9.
Just say we did flag this on BWAP last week.
Yes.
We said Callaghan tags, and then we said Cottrell would go to Bailey Dale, and that happened as well. And when I say we, I mean I flagged these things last week. So.
I mean the tags are something we really have to.
My team's crap, but my advice
be aware of, isn't it? Because there's just so many of them this early in the year. Normally, they don't start really cranking up till around the middle of the year. But just Callaghan gets 2 good games, and then I think he had a couple of good touches early in the game last week. And Sam Mitchell's like, "No, we're not having that."
He was about 30 or 35 at quarter time, and scored 20 for the rest of the game. So, and that was Hawthorn. Hawthorn obviously coming back and stealing all the points didn't help there either.
God, this is so Mick. I've got nearly 500k in the kitty. Like, Mick plays a different game to the rest of us. But
people who don't know, he's one of our basketball guys, and he plays very differently to just about anyone we know.
So if we're keeping all those players, he's got 500k to go and spend on whoever he likes.
Yep.
Just trade Ben Patton to Nick Dacos and spend your money that way.
Cam asking Tim Took Miller a chance to get DPP as well, potentially?
I thought he was going to be closer to 35% than he is. So he's hovering about 25% at the moment. So it's more his role is kind of starting around the midfield, maybe a bit of wing time, and then pushing forward, which is why he's kicking more goals than he has in previous seasons. So I think he's a chance mid-year. I don't think he's going to make the pre-round 6 DPPs. He would need to almost play exclusively forward in the next 2 rounds to get there, which if Damien Hardwick is listening, please do that. But more sort of for that mid-year addition of DPPs, I think for Took, and hopefully continues to play a bit more forward. But maybe it'll come down to where Sam Flanders ends up playing because he was really eased back on the weekend. So if he goes into midfield a little bit more, hopefully it's Took's time for super coaches anyway that he eats into instead of maybe Bailey Humphreys. And
they obviously have that one fewer game because of the bye. How many games do you need? Because it struck me with Xavier Lindsay, someone we thought would get defence DPP, but if he's missing the next couple,
so it's 3. 3 for the first batch.
Oh, so Lindsay has played 3 games.
Yeah, so he could sneak in.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. All right, one more question to finish off. Patch, Luke asking, we're talking about all these forwards who might be top 6. Is Jai Simpkin a viable option this week? He's averaging over 100, I think.
Yeah, he's been one of the best performing forwards so far this season. I looked pretty closely at him to start the year, decided against going there. He's playing in the midfield. He's playing well. I think he's a viable option. Check your buys. He's got that really nasty first batch of buys. But if you want to trade out Jason Horne-Francis and you're committed to it and you don't trust the 2 cheaper guys and you've got Bailey Smith already, then Simpkin would be the guy I'd trade him to.
Yeah, no, I don't mind him.
I just worry there's too many mouths to feed at North Melbourne.
Too many
there's
dudes.
Better players. There's, as good as he's been in the first 3 rounds, there's better players in that midfield. Like Sheasel's not going to average 80 for the whole year. So there's going to come a stage where Sheasel and Simpkin's averages flip, I think. And even if Simpkin averages 90, there's just only so many points to go around in a team that realistically is probably going to win, maximum 8 games maybe. So that obviously is going to affect their Supercoach scoring as well.
George Wardlaw might only be a week or so away.
And that as well, the Wardlaw factor. And, well, there's plenty of good kids. They're probably going to want to put Finn O'Sullivan in there at some stage. So, I think he started well, but I wouldn't be buying Simpkin.
Yeah. On Finn O'Sullivan, quickly before we finish off, we all trading him?
I don't know. Well, it's going to end up depending what I do. Like, I've played around with so many options, and I've tried to add mid-status to Jaden Short so I can get rid of him instead of some of the others, and unfortunately he continues to be def only in my side. So I think Sam DeConning I'm definitely going to get rid of because, I'm just willing to concede that he's a bust. But Finn O'Sullivan, he's going to pop at some stage, but I feel like it's going to be a really slow burn, and we've been really privileged so far this year that a lot of rookies are making cash quickly. And Supercoach has gone from being a game where sort of cash is king. I like to say now that sort of quick cash is king, and the quicker you can upgrade your side, it's a race to get premiums into your side. Now it's not, I'm going to sit until the mid-year buys and I'm going to have my team completed by round 15. Like, the best coaches are completing their team by round 10, round 11. So having someone like Finn O'Sullivan that I think made just under 10K on the weekend, that just doesn't fly anymore, really. So, getting choked up just the thought of trading Finn O'Sullivan. But I think we can pretty safely get rid of him if you have to this week. And unless Nevitt sub again, I'd be happier to keep someone like Nevitt that probably has the highest score in him than Finn O'Sullivan that has the role, but we haven't seen the scoring potential out of yet.
Yeah, and I mean, get your thoughts just quickly, Patch, on that, but it also does make me wonder about Xavier Lindsay, the most traded out player this week.
No.
Yeah, I don't really want to get rid of him because we know he can score really well. But if he is going to miss a couple of weeks, it's that it's going to take him a while. Now he's got that low score in his system.
I hate it.
Yeah. Or am I just justifying it to myself that I can use that money?
I see it, and as somebody who traded out Sardis for that reason, that I just wanted to keep the cash rolling and wasn't sure what it was going to look like when he got back. All of that still applies to Lindsay, but it's also, we've had some price changes now, and I think Lindsay's one that we can bank on later on in the season. We want rookies that'll be coming through progressively. He just moves back in the chain. We've already locked him in. I would be trading out if you started a Bo Allen that's not playing, or you've got Lucas Camporali or Finn O'Sullivan or someone that's just someone else I'd be looking to trade out. And on the Finn O'Sullivan, don't think he's a must trade out. Don't think he's someone you have to try and keep at all costs. I think if it suits what you're trying to do, that 210K could be far more useful than, a Lucas Camporali sitting on the bench. But you want to try and move on the rookies that aren't generating cash first, with Lindsay being, I think, the exception.
Jeez, I wish I held Sardis now. Jai Caldwell's out post-buy.
Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks.
Sardis would be a really good
The other thing that we haven't really even mentioned touched on the Bombers and Hawthorn this week obviously have the buy. It's the last week of best 18 scoring until we get through to those mid-year buys. So we've got a run of 10 or so weeks, and we're going back to best 22. So when you're making all these moves, maybe just have a think about what your team's going to look like next week when we don't get to drop off 4 or 5 really low rookie scores. You'll lose one with best 22, which is great this year, something we haven't had before, and obviously with flex there. But you're going to have to accept quite a few of those scores that we've been able to. Yeah,
well, it's like I could trade Will Day this week, who's been frustrating apart from one quarter against GWS where he scored about 80 points. But then I look at my team next week and do I want to field Elijah Hewitt at M8? Not particularly. So, they're the things you've definitely got to weigh up this week before you make your moves.
And in 3 weeks, I'd probably rather have Lindsay in my midfield than Christian Moraes.
But I think that's also why, and I've said earlier, people should be boosting this week. And if you can grab Humphrey and Maric because you'd be happy fielding both.
Yeah.
And if they're the reason that you can push a rookie off field, I think they could be really good for that period of best 22s, and then you can weigh up what you do with them sort of post that going into the mid-year buys.
Should you use a boost again if you've already used one? How many boosts? This is the
question
from me. This is a question from me to the panel. How many? I'm looking at using my second boost
have I used?
this week.
Yeah,
it feels too early to be using 2 boosts, but is it? Is it too early?
I don't think so. I don't think you'd want to be out of boosts by round 6. Be good to have a couple still up your sleeve.
You're saying that to me.
For those
That's
upgrades.
directed at me, isn't it?
But I think it's just so important. This is the time to get your team right, especially the rookies and the cash cows. And if you use an extra boost and can turn a guy who's not making much money, like a Finn O'Sullivan who is not playing, into a Moraes or a Bice or Ryan Maric and, you're 150K ahead in a month, I think that's a boost well used.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at using my second this week, which for me is, I know we've only had 3
that's
trade
conservative
periods, which for
for you.
me is conservative. So normally I would have been 3 by this point. So I think if you're on your second, you're okay. 3, yeah, you're probably going to be in a bit of strife in a few weeks' time when all these good options are coming up and people are going sort of 2 up, 1 down, or one up, 2 down to try and fit as many premiums into their team as possible, and you're already scraping the barrel, having no boost by sort of round 6, round 7.
Lovely. Well, now that I've got permission to use a boost, can we wrap up so I can go play with some
Yeah,
trades?
no, we better wrap it up there. I mean, I feel like we say this every year and every week. It's like, well, this week I'll use a boost. I'll get all these rookies and everything right, and then
I'll
slow down.
relax and
Yeah,
I
exactly. I won't use a
any
trade for a
trades.
few weeks, and then next week comes around and we'll see what happens. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks Patch and Tim for jumping on again. And yeah, keep an eye on those DPP numbers. We've actually got every single player in the league. You can look up their time in position. We're all over the ground. So you can spend plenty of time digging into that.
Yeah.
But
if you thought Dane Zorko was good, what about Corey Mobilio from Champion Data that's sent the table through this week? Absolutely made my week.
And plenty more content, of course, coming your way, including the live team show on Thursday night, where we'll talk through all the ins and outs, some late captain tips there as well. So tune in for that. Until then, good luck with your trades, and we'll talk soon.